Old man Volk is back, baby. Man, what a performance. I think that performance last night against Diego Lopes, I think that win pushes him over the line as the greatest featherweight of all time. I think we could finally say that now. Before last night, I was still championing Aldo as the greatest one. 45-pound champion, but I think Volk's done enough at this point. Overcoming the plus 35 curse, winning the belt back at 36 is pretty spectacular. The way he did it, there's so much to talk about with that fight. I'll get to it in a second. As always, we're going to do this breakdown by going through every fight on the card. So if you guys want to skip around and skip past the prelims, I'll have timestamps in the descriptions below. But as always, we'll go through every single fight. If you guys like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends to help boost this channel and the algorithm. With that all out of the way, let's get into it. Kicking us off with the early prelims, in which I went 4 for 4 on my predictions, so that's pretty good. I got every single fight right, which is good because on the regular prelims, I went 0 for 4, so that kind of balances everything out. But the first fight of the night, we had a women's bantamweight fight between Nora Cornell and Haley Cohen. And I picked the French lady to win this fight. I picked her to win by decision, but she got this done in the second round by submission. She displayed fantastic jiu-jitsu skills throughout the fight. First round, seemed like she was about to get it done by triangle, just couldn't get the angle right. And then in the second round, she finds a submission and gets it done. So fantastic performance for her. She called out Eileen Perez at the end of the fight. I think that's a fantastic fight to make next. Then we had a middleweight bout between Treson Gore and Marco Tulio. And this was, besides the main event, probably my fight of the night. This was a fantastic fight up until the stoppage in the second round. It was back and forth. Gore wobbled Tulio early in the first round. It looked like he might have gotten a knockout, but then Tulio comes back and he's hitting wheel kicks and all like 12 to 6 elbows, all sorts of weird stuff. And Tulio, man, he looks like, I know he's from Shudo Box, but he looks like a fighting nerds fighter because he's got so much style and pizzazz to how he throws strikes, and he's got a lot of power too. So he improves to 14-1. I'm looking for him to do big things at middleweight. He's 30 years old, so just kind of hidden in his prime. I can't wait to see what he does next in the division. Next up, we had a flyweight bout between Sumodarji and Mitch Raposo. This was a very close fight. I think you probably could have called it either way, but I would have given it to Sumodarji because he did more with his strikes than Raposo did with his takedowns. I thought Mitch was mixing things up well, but he just didn't do enough with the takedowns that he got, and this was a big win for Sumodarji. I said going into this fight that, coming off of 3 losses in a row, you kind of need to win this one if you want to stay in the UFC, and I think he did enough there, improving to 17-7. Then we had another middleweight bout between the man who looks like a rapper, Sarik Dumas, and Michael Olasejek. And Olasejek, I said going into this one, is just going to have a little bit too much power, a little bit too much fire, and I think he's going to get this done. I think I took him by second or third round KO, but this ended up being a first round KO for Michael, and he just showed that Polish power, putting it on him. The ground and pound was absolutely vicious. I know Dumas was saying like, oh, that was a bit of a quick stoppage. I was covering up. I was defending. You have to be defending intelligently, so you can't just cover up and expect the ref to let it go. You have to be using your hips and your feet and trying to move around, get off the bottom, switch an angle, do something. You can't just sit there and eat punches. So I think the stoppage was fine. There was another stoppage later on in the night that I think was a little bit but yeah, that's how the early prelims went. Let's move on to the regular prelims. Now, kicking off the regular prelims, which I said earlier, I went 0 for 4 on my predictions for. The first fight was in featherweight. It was between Darren Elkins and Julian Erosa, and I did say in my prediction video that if you're going to bet, I would bet on Juicy J. He has more skills to get it done. He's a little bit more proven. That chin is probably going to hold up a bit better, and that's exactly what we saw in the fight. Darren Elkins caught a shot early, I believe as a front kick or something like that, and he was just completely wobbled, and the commentators were saying it the whole fight that it looked like he just completely lost his balance. He was flopping all over the floor like a dead fish. And I love Darren Elkins. I want to almost see his his pulse go to a straight line if we're going to stop the fight, because it seems like he can come back from anything. But I think it was a good stoppage. I don't want to see him take too much more damage, and I feel like it's almost that time for the damage to hang them up. A fight like this just shows that you're not really going to go anywhere in the UFC, especially at this age, and it's still fun to watch Darren Elkins fight. He's a fan favorite. That's why I picked him to win. I was kind of betting with my heart there, but I think it's time. I think it's time for Darren Elkins to hang them up. I don't want to see any human being really take that much damage. It's kind of sad to watch at this point. So moving on, we had a lightweight bout between the 41-year-old Jim Miller and the 25-year-old Chase Hooper. And again, I think the story of the night is just father time up until the end. But there was a trajectory that we were going on throughout the night that it just seemed like father time was just killing all these legends and ending careers, and I feel like this was one of them. Jim Miller, I don't think retired in the octagon, but I think it's about that time that he should look at that. Getting beat by a 25-year-old. I know this is like an up-and-coming prospect, and a lot of people see Chase Hooper as potentially maybe becoming a future champion, but, that was not a great performance for Jim Miller. He defended well at points, but he was kind of just getting dominated throughout the whole fight, and it ended in a decision for Chase Hooper. So fantastic performance for him. He looks better and better every fight. I remember when he first came into the UFC, I think he was like 20 years old. He had the baby face. He didn't look that good with the striking. He was just kind of a jiu-jitsu guy, but now he's starting to put everything together. He's got a little bit of muscle on him now. You can see his biceps are starting to pop, and the striking looks clean. So I can't wait to see what Chase Hooper does in lightweight in the future. Moving on, we had a women's strawweight bout between Yan Xiaonan and Verena. I can never say her last name, so I apologize, but she had a fantastic performance, improving to 22-3, getting a pretty clean decision over Yan Xiaonan. I thought Yan would have more striking going, maybe be able to defend the takedowns a bit better, but Viran is just so good on the ground. She's so good with the takedown. She's going to probably do that to just about everybody in the division, besides maybe the champion. So fantastic performance by her. Hopefully she gets a title shot next. And moving on, we had a featherweight bout. Another featherweight bout. This was the featherweight fight card of the year. We had Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson. Now, there was kind of another storyline going throughout the card that there was a lot of height discrepancies, especially in the featherweight fights. Like almost every single featherweight fight, including a couple of the lightweight fights, there was a huge height discrepancy between the fighters. I mean, Jim Miller, Chase Hooper, we'll talk about another one here. This was one of the biggest ones of the night too, Sean Woodson and Dan Ige, and it seemed like the taller fighters were showing that, reach is a factor. Even in this fight, I thought Sean Woodson was doing a great job in the first two rounds, and then we get to the third round, Dan Ige lands a brilliant shot, follows it up with some great shots after that, and then the ref calls the fight, and basically everybody in the building, the commentators, everybody was saying that was way too fast of a stoppage, especially for a close fight that was nearing towards the end and looking like it was going to go to a decision and maybe could get called either way. Now, they did say on the commentary that Ige was winning on the scorecards, so it wouldn't have really helped Sean Woodson that much anyways, but I still want to see that fight ran back. It was such a close fight. Maybe do a 5-round fight night card. I'm not too sure, but fantastic fight. Good job for Ige, man. He always has fights like this where he just pulls out wins that you don't think he's going to win, or he has performances that are spectacular against guys who you don't think he's going to fight that well against, like stepping in on like hours notice against Lopes and beating him in the third round. Very impressive stuff. So Dan Ige is definitely a fan favorite and one of my favorite fighters for sure. So let's move on to the main card now. Kicking off the main card, we had a light heavyweight bout between Krylov and Reyes. Going into this fight, I was picking Krylov because he was coming off of, a couple slower years. I don't think he fought in 2023. I think he had one fight last year and then one or two fights in 2022. So not the most active guy, but a very, very impressive resume. I highlighted it in my prediction video. So I predicted him to win because I thought it would be better for the division. But I was like, man, you can't count Reyes out. Like, this guy almost beat John Jones. I know he had those 3 KO losses right after that. But besides those, I mean, his record's undefeated besides the 4 losses. That's obvious. But I think those 4 losses, they really woke him up and showed him, like anybody can be beat. Like, even though you almost beat John Jones, anybody can get knocked out. And, I think 2 of those were in the second round. One of them was in the first or something like that. They were kind of earlier stoppages, and he really bounced back. Now he has, I think, 3 wins in a row, and he just beat Krylov, and hopefully he gets a top 5 fight now or something like that. So yeah, good for Reyes, man. I'm happy for him. Even though I'm a huge John Jones fan, and, as a John Jones fan, I'm almost like expected to not like Reyes, but I do like the guy. I like the way he fights. I thought the shot that he landed on Krylov in the first round to knock him out almost came out of nowhere. It kind of caught me by surprise, and I was like, damn. Now, like, that's what Dominic Reyes is. Like, now I remember. So Next up, we had a featherweight bout between Bryce Mitchell and Jean Silva. And if you guys remember from my prediction video, going into this, I wanted Jean Silva to put the beating of all beatings on Bryce Mitchell for those pro-Hitler, pro-Nazi comments. It's disgusting. Really put a sour taste in my mouth. Before, I used to like Bryce Mitchell, but after that, can't really cheer for the guy. So I was cheering for Jean Silva. I told my cousin to put money on round 1 KO. It was looking like that was possible. I mean, Jean Silva was playing with his food the entire fight, just beating Bryce up on the feet. Anything that he landed was like rocking Bryce. And really at any point he could have knocked him out. So Jean Silva, you messed up our parlay, but it's all good because in that second round, got Bryce down to the floor, choked him out, beat him at his own game. And there's really nowhere in the fight that Bryce Mitchell was going to win. He had some success, here and there because he was fighting very aggressively, and it looked like a really good version of Bryce Mitchell. But like I said, there's just a big mismatch here in skill. Like, Jean Silva is a future champ. I think pretty much all the fighting nerds right now who are currently in the UFC are. Maybe Rufi, you can argue, is going to have a little bit of trouble at lightweight, but Jean Silva, I see him becoming a champ probably sometime in the future. Prates, like, who's going to stop that guy? He's knocking out everybody. Maybe Ian Gary can, we'll see. But I think if he knocks out Ian Gary, it's going to be tough for everybody at welterweight. And Cow is like the most complete out of all of them. I mean, he's the mastermind of the Fighting Nerds gym. I think he's going to be a champion too. So the skill quality at the Fighting Nerds team is just out of this world. And I'm crafting a video for you guys right now. It should be out in a week or two, probably a week. I'll try to get it out as soon as I possibly can, about kind of the history of the Fighting Nerds gym, where they came from, why are they doing so well. I'll kind of break down a little bit what makes that gym so successful, because it's one of the greatest stories in the UFC right now. It's just the success of the Fighting Nerds team. I think they're like 12-0 right now, or something like that. They have like some crazy undefeated record amongst all of the fighters, and yeah, I can't wait to see what all of them do in the future. And Bryce Mitchell, please go read a book. Don't just watch, Nazi propaganda films. Like, go read a book. Do some education. If you have any brain cells left after all of these vicious stoppages you're taking, and probably are going to take in the future. I feel like Dana White's going to give Bryce Mitchell a hard road in the UFC in the future now for those stupid comments. But anyways, we'll move on to another featherweight bout. Like I said, the featherweight fight card. We had Yair Rodriguez versus Pitbull. Now, going into this fight, I had picked Pitbull, and I gave you guys a pretty decent explanation. I've been watching him for 10 years. He was the champ in Bellator, double champ in Bellator, knocked out Michael Chandler in 60 seconds, like 12 wins by KO, 12 by submission, 12 by decision. He's a complete all-around fighter. Most of his fights were close, or he came back and beat the opponents who beat him. He's fought in some opponents twice, some opponents 3 times. He fought one opponent 4 times. Like, Patricio Pitbull is skilled, highly skilled, one of the most skilled fighters on the planet. And, he's got the experience. And coming into this fight, I feel like either the lights were too bright or the age caught up to him. I mean, he's 37 years old. It might have just been father time, but he got nothing going. And again, you have to add in the factor that it's Yair Rodriguez. So 37 years old, come into the UFC, your first fight in the UFC, and you're facing Yair Rodriguez, one of the trickiest puzzles, not just in the division, but in the entire sport. It looked horrible. Like, Pitbull got nothing going. When he got his hands going, he was landing, and it was looking good, but it was too little. Like, he had like 3 or 4 spurts, and that was it. And Yair just put it on him, like hitting switch kicks, hitting spinning kicks, all sorts of different stuff. Yair is so fun to watch, especially when he's on. And great performance by Yair, showing the new guy that it's not that easy to just walk into the UFC. We've had Ben Askren come in. That was the worst possible way you could come into the UFC, losing to Robbie Lawler, but then somehow getting that win. And then, you get destroyed in 3 seconds by Jorge Masvidal, and then you get choked out by Damian Maia, and then you get knocked out by Jake Paul. That's basically the worst transition ever in, I think, all sports history for somebody moving from one league to a higher league. I don't think it's ever gone that badly. Michael Chandler is now 2-5 in the UFC. Michael Venom Page is doing well, but he's not going to win a belt. He's also 37 years old. So a lot of these Bellator fighters coming over, they usually come over too late. So that's why I'm excited that Pico's coming over in his kind of mid-20s. I hope some other fighters come over soon, like Usman Nurmagomedov. I would love to see Nemkov come over, but I don't think that's going to happen. So that's just kind of how it goes for those Bellator fighters. It was a real shock to me. It was almost like watching Messi play in the MLS after watching him play in Spain for so long, right? It's kind of a shock to see Patricio Pitbull in an octagon, not a circle cage. But yeah, man, I would like to see another fight from him in the UFC. I feel like he has a lot more to show, but yeah, it just sucks because UFC fans are going to watch that fight and be like, yeah, this Pitbull guy sucks, but he's 37, again, like I said, and if you go back and you watch his career, he truly is, like, the greatest Bellator fighter ever. Like, he's number one. He had a better career in Bellator than Michael Chandler did, than Ben Askren. Like, he's the guy. If you go back and watch his fights, he had a terrific career, and he deserves respect as one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. So, yeah, but great performance by Yair. Moving on, we had a lightweight bout between Michael Chandler and Paddy Pimblett. Again, father time. I picked Michael Chandler because in my prediction video, I had a theme of picking the old dogs. I'd picked Darren Elkins, Jim Miller. I'd picked, Volkanovski, Michael Chandler. I'd picked Pitbull. And none of those worked out, except for Volk. We'll get to him in a second. But yeah, it was sad to see, man. You see Michael Chandler come out. He looks great in the first round. I thought he might have won the first round. Second round, Paddy takes over. And then third round, it's lights out for Michael Chandler. Not like completely lights out, but, Paddy put a beating on him and ended the fight in the third. So, terrific performance, man. I can't keep betting against the Scouser just because he has that funny accent and the medieval peasant haircut. It kind of throws me off a little bit, like I'm sure it does for a lot of you guys who don't like Paddy, but I got to start betting on him now because he's fantastic. I can't even imagine in my head a press conference, let alone a fight, between Paddy Pimblett and Islam Makhachev, but hey, that's only a fight or two away, so we'll see what he does in the top 10. His next fight is likely going to have to be against like a Dan Hooker, Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, like a high-level guy like that. But I think besides Max Holloway there, the guys who I named are all 35 years old or older. So the theme throughout the night is I don't think I'm ever going to bet on anybody older than 35 or 36 ever again. Because every time I do, even when they're really good fighters, they end up losing. And sometimes when you watch a fighter for 10 years, it's hard to let go. It's like, John Jones fighting Tom Aspinall soon. I'm a huge John Jones fan, but even that fight, I'm like, yeah, if I was placing my money, I don't know, I might have to bet on Tom. It's like 38 years old, moving up to heavyweight. Sometimes it's hard to let your favorite fighters go like that and acknowledge before the fight happens that they might lose it. So yeah, great performance by Paddy. He moves to 23-3. Michael Chandler, like I said, 2-5 in the UFC, 38 years old. I think this is pretty much it for him, unless he has like one final swan song where he fights Conor McGregor. Is never going to happen, but maybe like Justin Gaethje or some exciting fight like that. I'd love to see Eddie Alvarez come back and fight Chandler again, but I don't know, maybe some sort of swan song finish like that for Chandler. One big fight, give him a fight night or a big spot on a pay-per-view and maybe put a BMF belt on the line or something like that and let him retire on a win, hopefully, because it was sad to see, man. Michael Chandler, again, like Pitbull, had so much success in Bellator, and if you watched Bellator growing up, you knew, like, if this guy comes over, he might be able to beat Conor McGregor. He's, like, really, really talented. And then he comes over at 35, 36 years old, a little bit late, and doesn't really have the performance in the UFC that he should have had if he came over a little bit earlier. So it just makes me sad that some of these UFC fans don't get to see these fighters, in their true prime, as they truly were when they were fighting in Bellator, when it comes to Pitbull and Chandler. But let's move on to the main event, that featherweight title fight between Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes. So going into this, people were saying Volkanovski's been knocked out twice in a row. He's lost to Islam twice and Ilya. Like, those are 3 losses out of his last 4, something like that. Is he going to be able to pull this out against Lopes, this up-and-coming 30-year-old fighter who's, taking fights against anybody? Seems like he's fighting multiple times a year, and he seems like an absolute killer. Is he going to be able to handle this guy? And Volkanovski proved that, for a champion like him, age isn't really a factor. Now, it's probably a lot of things. If you remember back, Volkanovski has 4 losses, not 3. Those 3 recent ones were all in the UFC, but he had 1 loss early in his career when I think he was about 23 years old over in Australia. in welterweight, which is crazy. If some of you guys remember, this guy was a rugby player who was over 200 pounds at one point in his career. Now, that develops some muscles that you don't get from weightlifting. You don't get from anything else. And I think that's the reason why he's had so much longevity. He used to be such a big, strong, powerful guy, and he's cut down all the way to 145. You add on top of that his fight IQ, which is the reason why he won this fight. So the first round, close. I think Volkanovski squeezes it out. He had a pretty decent first round. He got a few more shots in there. But Lopes, you can just tell, he's got way more power. He's got a 5-inch height advantage and a little bit more speed, but Volkanovski's more precise and accurate and controlled the distance better despite Diego Lopes having that height advantage. Now, I believe despite the height advantage, he only had a 1-inch reach advantage, which is crazy. That just shows you how long Volkanovski's arms truly are. But second round, even more dominant from Volk, but we have that knockdown there at the end of the round. Some people say that won Diego Lopes the round. I think that's ridiculous. I think at most you can score it a 10-10 round, which they don't really do in the UFC. I think they should do that more often, but they don't. But I think just because how dominant the entire round was, I think you have to give it to Volk still. Even though there was a knockdown at the end that was the most devastating shot of the round, I still think you have to score the round as a whole. And Volkanovski, for me, took the second round. Now, the third round was also close, but I think Volkanovski squeezed that one out as well. So I had it 3-0 going into the fourth. And the fourth is when Diego Lopes really started catching Volk, cutting him up a little bit, busting those eyes up. You know, Volk did not look good at the end of the fight. He looked beat up. And I think Diego Lopes clearly stole that fourth round. So going into the fifth, I was kind of iffy. I was like, this could be 3-1, this could be 2-2. Like, Volkanovski needs to win this round. He needs to go out there and show that championship medal and really put on a performance here and, like, show that he's the veteran, he's the champion. And he did absolutely that, even though Diego Lopes did not wilt. You know, he wilted a little bit against Dan Ige. You know, Dan Ige was able to get to him in the third round of their fight. But in this fight, Diego Lopes looked awesome. He looked great in the fifth round. He was putting things on Volk. He was, you know, screaming at him, yelling at him, beckoning him on to fight. Volkanovski didn't bite for that. He's already fought Max Holloway 3 times. He didn't bite for any of that. He kind of stayed on the outside, picked his shot, stayed clean, and I think he squeezed out that victory. I would score it 4-1 for Volk, but I could see it 3-2. I can't see anybody scoring this for Diego Lopes. I think that's crazy. Even though it felt like a 50-50 fight the whole time because Volkanovski was winning. He had the better strategy. He had the better fight IQ. He was picking his shots. He was cleaner. But every time he got hit, it was like, oh, man, is he going to go out? Like, Diego Lopes hit so damn hard. So, absolutely fantastic performance. Like, one of the greatest championship performances I think I've ever seen. Now, you could ask for maybe a slightly better quality opponent than Lopes to put on that performance against. I know Lopes is a little bit untested, but still, like, this guy's going to have an amazing career, and this win is only going to look better and better on Volkanovski's record as Lopes does great things in the sport. I think Lopes could be a future champion as well. I think we saw that last night with how well he fought Volkanovski. Sure, it's a 36-year-old Volkanovski coming off of a couple, you know, pretty brutal losses, but at the same time, Lopes, man, I mean, he had Volk in a lot of trouble throughout that fight. Like, that was the most trouble I've seen Volkanovski in, despite being knocked out twice. And, you know, he just lost to, like, the pound-for-pound number 1 and pound-for-pound number 3 guy. I forget how the orders are right now, but it's Jones, Islam, and Ilya. Those are the top 3 pound-for-pound men on the planet right now, and Volkanovski lost to 2 of those guys, one of which is a much bigger man than he is. So yeah, I think that cements him as the GOAT, even though he's 1 win behind Jose Aldo for the record of most championship fights, or most championship wins, I should say, at featherweight. I think he will catch that record. I think his next defense, not that the UFC is going to give him an easy fight. There are no easy fights at featherweight, but I think they give him a slight layup in the next one. Maybe give him somebody who stylistically could favor him a little bit so he can get 1 more win, get that record matched, and then maybe he can surpass the record with another fight this year. I know he was saying in the post-fight press conference that he wants 3 fights this year. That's a lot. I think maybe 2 is enough, but we'll see. We'll see if he can break that record. For me, it doesn't really matter, you know, winning the belts back at 36 years old, and just the quality of opponents that he's had throughout his career, and just the losses when you consider who he's lost to compared to who Jose Aldo's lost to. I got to give the edge to Volk, and I love Jose. Like, growing up, that was my guy, so They can stay tied for now, maybe, but I don't know. I kind of give the edge to Volk at this point. You guys can let me know how you guys think about the situation down below in the comments. Who do you guys have as the GOAT? What did you guys think of the fights? Do you guys think that Dan Ige stoppage was a little bit early? Do you think that one should be ran back? Who do you want to see Lopes and Volkanovski fight next? Who do you want to see Paddy Pimblett fight next? And yeah, let me know all that stuff down below in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, it means the absolute world to me. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.